I woke up in the middle of the night and my crown suddenly had so much sensation. It was like buzzing. Like it was as if like an electrical circuit was turned on in my head. A lot of people, this is what I did. I was very interested in the upper chakras because they're the more spiritually connected chakras. And I was like, these are the ones that are going to make me have more mystical experiences. But what I'm slowly learning over time is that these bottom three need to be really cleared out and anchored into the body and into the earth so that you have a more fortified being to experience these higher levels of consciousness.
So did you use EDMR for overcoming depression?
Yes. A man who healed his depression and heartache through an I love you practice. And one of them is 7 minutes hands on heart. And you just repeat, I love myself.
Okay, so for someone who is overthinking a lot, you'd recommend that they do a lot of lower body work.
And then go put your feet in the grass. Any sort of grounding meditations, put your feet in the grass, look at a tree, put your freaking phone down.
Hello everyone. Today I have with me Jamie Lynn Hart. Jamie is an award-winning pop and rock singer and a songwriter. She has toured countries, released albums. She's a favorite in Boston, Massachusetts and beyond. Jamie is also a spiritual life coach, a yoga teacher, and a professor at Berklee College of Music. In this podcast, we'll cover her mystical experience, her journey of spiritual awakening that changed her life forever. So let's tune in and find out. In conversation with the very energetic and powerful Jamie Lynn Hart. Enjoy yourselves.
Hi, Jamie. Welcome to my podcast. I'm very pleased to have you today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is really fun.
So Jamie, you sang at a school musical at the age of 14, and since then, you never look back. You were living your dream career, winning awards, performing at notable venues. Appreciation was pouring in from all sides. You were getting fame and recognition, and yet you weren't happy. Why was that?
Ooh, we're going right for the big one.
Yes,
I mean, and there's like the part of me that's like, oh, I was not fame. Like it wasn't fame. Like I think it could have been like on my way there. But you know, when you have this vision for your life and you think that the vision that you're creating in your mind is the thing that's going to solve all the problems and make you happy. And I realized like the vision was big stages, big audience, big influence. And I realized like I was having a like smaller version of that, like a micro version of the dream, but I still wasn't happy. So I was like, shouldn't I be enjoying the process on the way? Like even a smaller audience, like why do I assume that it's a certain size that's going to just really like lock something in for me? So, you know, and then on the way, I had a spontaneous spiritual awakening, which really shook things up. We can get into that. My trajectory kind of like zigzagged. And I realized like I was chasing a vision. I was chasing like an essence of something, and it wasn't fully grounded into a why. Like I hadn't like really sat down and be like, why do I want this? Is it just because I have a talent and this is like the trajectory of someone that has a good voice and people assume that it has to be this. And it's like, does it though? So it's been kind of my cat's going to be a feature in this, by the way. I can't help it. It's been like just a really like strange spiral. It's still happening. But I found a lot more peace than I had during that time.
And what did you do next?
I went to therapy. I was like, you know what? I'm going to try therapy. What year was this? This is probably like, I don't know, 2015 or so. And just delve into that, like the amount of energy and attention, focus, money, all of it that I was putting into the music career. I'm like, can I just like take a little bit of that and move it into mental health and just making sure I'm like doing the right thing? Because like, shouldn't I be happy? And if I'm not happy on the journey there, I'm doing something wrong. So then I just delved like full on into mental health, psychology, like how psychology relates to spirituality and how they coalesce. And that's really where I found more passion. So it's a journey to kind of figure out how to combine my love for singing and music and coaching with my love for like neuroscience, psychology, and spirituality, and like how are they moving together so that I can be the most integrated artist on this journey.
Right. And so when you were pursuing your career in music, everything came to you, but then you realized that there was something that was missing, and that was bridged when you actually went for therapy and you tapped into spirituality.
Yes, and I would clarify that I don't feel like everything was coming to me. I honestly felt, and this was before I knew about law of attraction, magnetism. I felt like I was chasing. Like I was booking all these shows, I was booking my tours, I was like scheduling albums, and I was like, this doesn't feel aligned. This is before I understood flow state, right? I felt like chasing. It was like very in the masculine energy of like, I will go get this. Where now that I understand, when I'm in the flow, when I'm really following my joy and being willing to be honest that being on stage all the time might not be my joy. I was kind of fighting the construct of what I thought it
Yeah.
should be, and then getting still long enough, which is still hard for me, to really ask myself, what is it that you actually want right now, and can you trust that that's leading you to the next step?
Right. You were essentially challenging what you would think was normal for
Yeah.
you to pursue.
Yeah, like, oh, you must want to be a famous singer. Oh, you're good enough. Why aren't you famous? Like that one like really stings, and I still get it. The backhanded compliment of, oh, you should be way bigger than you are. And it's like, thanks. That like, because that's my core wound, is that I'm not going to be living up to my potential. So that's like a core wound that's been kind of like this impetus of driving me forward. And that's something I have to kind of, I don't want to say battle, that sounds very extreme, but it has something I have to be in conversation with all the time.
Right. And at the end of the day, you have to be satisfied with what you're doing and not go on other people's perception of where you actually should be.
Exactly.
And you had a spiritual awakening. Can you describe what was that like?
Yeah, and I was thinking last night, I was, you know what, I haven't talked about this publicly, and I'm happy to now. I just feel like there's, when I don't know if you've had religious or mystical experiences, there's something just like so poignant and unique and special that you worry about talking about it too much, like it's gonna somehow diminish its specialness.
And only if you're comfortable.
Yeah, and but it's at the same time, it's my favorite thing. It's the best part of my life. So in 2013, at the time, I was doing a fair amount of yoga, and the thing is, I consider myself a yogi in all aspects of what yoga is outside of just the asana physical poses. And I was doing asana yoga just to be in shape. I was like, this is something I think I should do. And I was having some cursory research on chakras, just a little bit. I was just dipping my toe. I had studied Buddhism a little bit in college, but I had the only way to describe it is a spontaneous Kundalini awakening in the middle of the night. And so this was a very physical experience where I woke up in the middle of the night and my crown suddenly had so much sensation. It was like buzzing. Like it was as if like an electrical circuit was turned on in my head. It was just buzzing, and I woke up and I was very frightened because I had nothing like this ever happened in my life.
Yeah.
And so this upper spine into my crown was just,
Wow.
and it was 4 a.m. and I got up and I'm like walking around my apartment, I'm like, what is happening? And I thought I was dreaming, and I was like, no, this is very physical, this is not a dream. And then I heard a voice. No, this is like, it sounds so crazy because at the time, and I'm still quite practical, I heard just like a little, this is good, Jamie. Those are the words, this is good, Jamie. And then all the fear went away. But I was like, wait, what? I still had so many questions, and I was like, how am I ever going to go back to sleep? And over time I went to sleep and I woke up and there was still this remnants of this tinkle, 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 tinkle. And thus began this exploration to what the heck was that?
Right.
Like, how many Google searches, tingle, tickle on head? How is that ever going to give me an answer?
Exactly. Like a puzzle.
It was a puzzle, and I was like, I need to know what this is. And then I remember coming across a YouTube video, 12 Signs of Spiritual Awakening. And it was number 12. that said tingles or tickles on the crown of your head. And I remember in that moment, I started crying. Like, I felt my whole body have this aha. And the other things, there was other things like a sudden interest in crystals. Okay, I literally have it in my hand. Trying to understand some spiritual concepts. So every single one, there was a But then when it got to number 12, I knew. And still just trying to piece things together, because after that day, everything was different. It was just as if I was born again. Colors were different. My sensory experience was different. I became much more sensitive. So it's like I fit all the classical signs of awakening, where like friends fall away. Everything in your experience just shifts to a different level of consciousness.
Do you think is that because you were practicing yoga and suddenly you had that experience at 4 a.m.?
Yeah, and that's the question, right? And I honestly, the more I think about it, I think I was on a time clock. I think my soul was meant to wake up, but this was just like, boom, ready? I'm like, I don't know. So I kind of feel there was some sort of timeline shift that was meant to happen within this year. And I don't know if I was late to the party, so my higher self was like, it's time. Like, put the electrical socket in my spine or something. But the yoga must have had something to do with it, because it's like, the asana is designed to align you into your Kundalini in so many ways, and breath work as well.
No, I can only imagine what that experience would have been like, and 1,000 questions popping up, and you don't know the answers of any of them.
Yeah, and then I'm like, and then the things that I was worried about started to seem so small, which is the beauty of spirituality, right? Is you stretch yourself to a level of consciousness where worrying about where my next show is going to be, or like who's going to make my posters, like it all seems so silly. So I was like, oh, and I just started to feel relief about everything that I was so anxious about.
Well, whatever you're doing clearly worked.
I hope so.
You mentioned Kundalini. I have heard of Kundalini Yoga, but I don't know much about it. If you can shed some light on that.
Traditionally in India, they have like a form of Kundalini Yoga, which is very similar, which is just like certain poses, breaths, mantra to activate the Kundalini. For those of you that don't know Kundalini, in yoga, they say like at the base chakra, at the base of your spine lives, like it's represented by a snake, and it's all of your dormant energetic potential. So the yogic path starts to help you unravel that energy from the spine, and as it ascends up, your chakras awaken, and then you get to a point where you're in samadhi. So the energy finally moves up, your crown opens, and then you reach a point of consciousness with source. So some yogis can work to elicit this experience with extreme energy work and poses, that when people will have these awakenings when they're not fully ready, and it can actually blow out your nervous system. So if you can literally just Google like the dark side of Kundalini awakening, and people will not be ready to experience this this magical phenomenon. And for me, it did happen gradually. I wasn't like, oh my God, spirits. It did feel like it was like a boop, now go figure it out. But the Yogi Bhajan type of Kundalini Yoga, which is made popular in the West, is a lot of work on breath work and mantra. So the most famous, you've heard of like breath of fire, which is used in a lot, and that's so you like use a specific mudra, and then you're doing rapid fire things, and it starts to clear up so much of your energy, and it's moving a lot of energy and breath to your glandular system. So there's a lot of anti-aging benefits, and it's Sat Kriya has been my favorite. That's been the most transformative for me. And in Kundalini Yoga, they talk about the 10 bodies, like there's 10 energetic bodies, where in traditional yoga, they say there's 4. So it's just a lot deeper and more complex. And, you can do an 11-minute practice and experience like really profound benefits after a certain amount of time.
And do you do Kundalini Yoga every day?
A lot of days. When I have 8 a.m. clients in China, it's a little bit more challenging. But today, like for the time I had, today I actually did Wim Hof breathing. I did a different type of breathing, and then I do a lot of like cat-cow spinal stuff, because it's so much of it is about spinal health. Because when we're getting all the spinal, the fluid moving and all the nerves, you're really increasing your nervous system. That's really one of the biggest benefits I didn't know I was going to have from this practice, is my nervous system being so much more fortified. So it's like even when I go out in the world, in the city, or when I'm traveling, I don't feel as like affected by life. You know, I have a stronger sense of self and groundedness.
Right, you're more receptive to your surroundings.
Yeah.
If you can tell us some breath work that we can do as well as viewers.
Yeah, because I tell my clients this, it also depends on what you're trying to experience. So if you need calmness, you want to be activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So yeah, just like slow inhale, longer exhale. Some people need counts, like, so okay, breathe in for 4, breathe out for 8.
Okay.
That would be great for anxiety. And then the alternative nostril breathing.
Yeah.
The left side is considered the moon, which is more parasympathetic, and the right side is the sun, which is more energizing. So just breathing in the left nostril. And that would be for calm. The other side would be for energy.
That's the Ida and the Pingala.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And then and my favorite of all is the breath of fire. So that's the one that I demonstrated. And the traditional is the arms up, but if that gets too much, just like rapid inhale and exhale. In a minimum 3 minutes, because in Kundalini they say like the time spent is the 3-minute mark is where a lot of the magic starts to happen within the glandular release of certain fluids. I'm getting so technical. So yeah, breath of fire for heightened states, and then with retentions too. So big breaths in at the end, hold for as long as you can, and then all your cells are just regenerating. There's so much magic that happens behind the scenes, but at the end of the 3 minutes, like, oh, I feel better, but you might not know why.
And breath just aligns you, and you feel a lot more better, especially the longer exhales you mentioned.
Yeah,
and
it's amazing.
You mentioned parasympathetic nervous system. So what exactly is that?
So yeah, our nervous systems, we could simplify it into like the sympathetic is the fight or flight, and the parasympathetic is the rest and digest. So a lot of us are in a sympathetic nervous system just because of the way our society is constructed and our addictions to these innocuous drugs like coffee. And so we're often in that like, let's go. And then the parasympathetic is the opposite. It's rest, digest, meditation, chill. So it's always having a balance of both. But I notice with most of the work I do, it's getting people more into the parasympathetic. And even myself, like I have this, I have a higher energy. I have to remember to activate both, because I have a little bit of an addiction to being the higher energy do. And so part of my spiritual practice is to work into the more calm, receptive states.
And you mentioned the chakras before. I know that we have 7 main chakras. Can you tell us a bit more about them? And for the viewers who don't know much about chakras.
So many people say that there's more than that, but like the yoga system works with just the 7. And you could say the lower 3, this would be a good time for me to like pull up a picture. I was like, do I have a picture? Actually, I might, but I don't want to interrupt. The lower 3, so you have like the base, the root chakra, which is going to be, and that's in the color red, that's going to be more survival, tribe, home, groundedness. So it's like, do I have money? Am I fed? Do I have my family? And then the second one, where it's right in like the womb sacral area, is the sacral chakra. That's orange. That's creativity, sexuality, passion. And then we have the solar plexus, which is the yellow, and that's ego. That's how do I show up in the world? Who am I? Right. So these lower 3 are considered just the more base chakras. These are just like, who am I as a human? These are the grounding chakras. And a lot of people, this is what I did, I was very interested in the upper chakras because they're the more spiritually connected chakras. And I was like, these are the ones that are going to make me have more mystical experiences. But what I'm slowly learning over time is like these bottom 3 need to be really cleared out and anchored into the body and into the earth, so that you have a more fortified being to experience these higher levels of consciousness.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I'm interested in the chakras in the higher ones. Exactly.
And you'll be able to determine it. Like, you know, if you do feel grounded in your life and you are working on these like lower, my roommate is a Reiki practitioner. She calls it the lower three. Make sure your lower three are good. You'll notice that like you'll have just easier access to these higher ones when these threes are locked in. And then the upper three and the lower three kind of meet at the heart, right? And we all know what the heart energy is. And it's, you know, often compassion for self, but definitely for others, but definitely for self, right? And this is a lot of one of the hardest ones, right? Because we have so much wounding that we don't even remember from like,
Yeah.
you know, ages 0 through 7, which is where so much of our subconscious is formed. And so the heart chakra is just always such a big point of attention for anyone. And then we have the throat chakra, which is where a lot of my work comes in as a vocal coach and as a singer. So, and I've been working recently with people with blocks here where they can't sing or they can't express their truth. And each one has reasons why it could be blocked or why it could be overactive or underactive.
Okay.
And then we have the third eye, which we've known about. And that's, you know, intuition, wisdom, envisioning something beyond what you see with your normal eye.
Yeah.
And then the crown, which is, you know, the connection to the divine, the connection to source. So, and I feel people that suffer with depression, and I definitely have in the past, which is why I'm so into the mental health sphere, is a lot of people say it's a blocked crown, right? When we don't have access to something greater than ourselves, to our, even to our, whether we want to talk about God, source, because sometimes that makes people uncomfortable. So it's just like connection to your higher self. Like if we can get on board with that, there's something beyond us.
Yeah, some higher energy.
There's something going on. And when we're blocked in this area, which I feel is very, very common in this society, if you're not actively having this connection somehow, there's this feeling of, is this all there is? Right?
Yeah.
And we've all been there.
And how would I know if my chakras are blocked?
Ooh, that's a good question. You can kind of feel like if I'm like not creative, like I don't have drive, you know, I'm feeling kind of blah. I mean, that could be a lot of things actually, but my intuition says that's sacral and solar plexus, right? There's not a lot of movement happening in my energy. I don't feel inspired to create. That's often like that lower sexuality chakra, which is why sexuality is so linked to creativity and manifesting, which is another passion of mine. Yeah, and heart, that one's an easy one. Like heartbreak, feeling not compassion for others, self-worth issues. That's heart and solar plexus. Yeah, inability to see beyond what's in front of you, a lack of envisioning. And so there's so many charts and things that you can look at too. I have a blocked chakra, and there's so much health related to each thing, right? So leg and foot and liver health is all related to certain chakras, which also correspond to Chinese medicine too, which is very cool.
Great. And you also mentioned depression, anxiety would be relating to your crown chakra. So is
Yeah.
that something that you worked on as well, specifically to cope with anxiety, depression?
Yeah, that's why I went to therapy for the first time, because I was like, this is not okay. Like, this is not how I envisioned my life. Things are finally happening for me, and I'm miserable because it's just, you know, there was still so much I had to work on. And if you ever see spiritual memes on Instagram or something, and it says like what spiritual awakening started as, right? And like a picture of smiles and crystals and chakras, and it's like what it ended up being, and people on a carnival ride screaming with their face like this. Because once you wake up, you can't unknow things. You can't go back to the way your life was. So that's that red pill, blue pill analogy that we all use, right? It's like which reality do you want to know? Because people take the blue pill because they don't want to look at their, I'm like, can I swear? I was about to swear, but I caught myself. People don't want to look at their stuff, right? They don't want to look at their pain. They don't want to look at their past. They don't want to look at their patterns because it's hard.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm on the ride. Let's do this, you know? And stuff comes up, right? You start to just, it naturally arises. Then when you're like, this is the thing I need to work on. Oh, I have unhealed trauma, right? And this can be big T trauma, they say, where it's like really big traumas, or just little T traumas. all of them matter, and all of them are living in our body, because so much of us, especially when we're kids, we don't either feel safe to fully cry it out or get help or fully feel. Like, we don't always feel safe to feel. So really understanding that when I give myself permission and have the courage to fully cry, fully feel, and let that go, even from my age now. If something happened to me when I was 14 and I'm going back in time, basically like you're quantum healing and allowing that inner child or inner teenager to like fully express how painful that was, it immediately makes a shift. It ripples in time. And we can even talk about this as an ancestral healing too. Like, we are healing so much of our timeline. And then I watch my life change. And it's miraculous. This is where I love the therapeutic aspect and the spiritual aspect. Everything in your external is going to mirror what you're doing in your own inner work. And it's my favorite thing. It's my favorite thing to talk about, because I see how my life shifts. People don't realize that they don't have to hold that anymore. Yeah. And then, people say like, well, how? And I'm like, there's myriad ways up the mountain. And if spirituality is not your thing, which is totally fine, like things like EMDR, somatic therapy, there's so many modalities, even that we could just call more therapeutic Western psychological therapies, that can access these pains and these memories, like even plant medicine, which is another big topic in the spiritual community, like that can unearth these things if you know you're ready. And that's why I talk about it so openly, because I'm like, you don't have to suffer. And I feel like if I just had one wish for my life, and it's, can I use everything I've gone through and everything I've healed and every little piece of work I've done to be an example and to be an inspiration for people to know they don't have to suffer. Like, I can't think of a better intention for my life.
Jamie, you mentioned EDMR. Can you tell us a bit more about that? What do you practice EDMR?
It's used a lot with like veterans and PTSD, and it's been highly proven to be beneficial to work on PTSD specifically. And there's three. If there's any therapists watching this, I don't want to mess this up. Yeah. But there's different ways to experience bilateral stimulation. So sometimes they put like little cathodes, like do do do. So you're feeling a stimulation in both hemispheres. There's also binaural beats, specific beats at a specific rate, and then there's the eye movement one where you're looking at things. I personally did about 5 to 6 sessions in this with binaural beats, because that I have to go close my eyes and go in to experience memories. And I was working on depression. I was like, why does this stick around in my life? And this is also like something that's genetic, and I think so much of my depression was also very much in fear of being that way, and it was perpetuating it. And so with EMDR, both hemispheres. So when trauma happens, we often store trauma in one half of our brain. Like, it just it's a way of protecting ourselves. So they say like sometimes trauma is stored in like one little part. And when we have the binaural beats, we have a whole brain coherence. So all aspects of the brain and the neurons come online to navigate the trauma differently from a different level of consciousness, from a bit more of like an objective state, as you're experiencing the sadness or the fear in real time. So, and I think this could scare people, being like, I don't want to relive that. But the essence of it is you're with a very trained specialist that knows exactly how far to take you and exactly when to stimulate the beats, and then they're targeting specific questions. So for me, it was just like a lot of crying while the beeps were happening. Yeah. And then something is happening behind the scenes where the whole brain coherence and both hemispheres are online, seeing this trauma from a different perspective. And then by the end of these 5 sessions, it took a couple months, and like there's sessions in between, I felt different. Like, and I've never felt the hopelessness, because I started feeling like this hopelessness, like, is this gonna always come back? This fear of depression, this little like these mood issues. Yeah. And I can honestly say it's never been the same since then.
That's great. So you used EDMR for overcoming depression, and I'm going to read the full what it stands for. So it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
Oh, reprocessing. That was the one. Yes.
Yeah. So did you use EDMR for overcoming depression?
Yes.
and you've never looked back since.
Yeah, right. And now when, bad moods come or sadness comes or heartaches come, I just approach everything so differently. When I used to think of, I was very black and white. I'm like, it's either depression or you're healed. It's like when I think of moods as weather, right? Where it's just like, oh, it's a cloudy day today. What do I need to integrate? And this could be like, oh, there's more big stuff we need to unblock, versus like, it's just, you're having a rough time. You're just at a stage in life where you need to make some changes, right? And it's just approaching mental health from a different lens has been so beneficial for me, because they say healing is a spiral. I think that's so important on the spiritual path, to know that it's not linear. And it's so much easier to think I'm graduating levels and that one day I'll be a guru on podcasts. It's happening. Next week, or when I go on this sabbatical and I'm alone in a foreign country, I could spiral down and realize, oh, I have work to do on myself. But I'm so grateful I have the tools, right? I have reprogramming tools. I can trust in the process, and I can trust in that spiral.
Right. And that's why we have that unalome, right? Where you have the and then the spiral.
There's a tiny one. There's a teeny one on my arm. But
what a coincidence.
It's funny because they messed up. I don't know. They ended up not doing it right, and it ended up looking like a treble clef. And the tattoo artist didn't know I was a singer. So I thought it was so funny that my unalome ended up as a treble clef. I was like, okay, spirit, I get it.
You know what the meaning is, and that's what matters.
Yeah, exactly.
No, and plus it's always said, right, that usually the ones who are most experienced, even the monks, the gurus in the spiritual path, they actually face the most challenges as well.
Right. It's so true. It's so true.
Great. And Jamie, do you have any favorite chant or mantra that you normally fall back on?
No, but it's so funny that you just asked that, because I was singing Om Asatoma, is it Gayatri? No. Om Asatoma Satgamaya. I was singing that in the bath last night. And I was like, this feels good to sing. But I was like, I feel like I want to be gifted another mantra, and so I asked the universe if there is a mantra that is designed for me in my life and my path right now, let it be so. So I'm like actually on the hunt for the right one. And I haven't done a ton of chanting. And every time I say that, people are surprised. They're like, you don't do toning and chanting and mantras? Like, I do them with the Kundalini. Like if there's a specific one, like a Waheguru, got that on my arm. And this is Garmuti.
Brilliant.
And that's Waheguru, and that was something I had chanted with these Kriyas. But yeah, I'm on the hunt for like a mantra. So if you guys have any, send
I actually have one that I got on my arm. If you can.
What is it?
Ram. I don't know if you can see it, but it's Rama Dasa Sa Se Sohang.
So Rama, that's a Kundalini chant. Dasa,
yeah. So it's basically aligning with the universe and taking in the energy of the sun, the moon, the earth, being grounded, being as bright, being as calm and nurturing, and aligning with the universe, and then taking all the power in.
So that's like, and I just had a vision of all the chakras in alignment, right? It's like and each chakra has a tone as well. That's another thing you can tone. You can tone the tones of each chakra, which are very like ya, ma, da. It's very similar.
So, Jamie, what does spirituality mean to you?
Yeah, it's an inherent trust of knowing that there's something greater for you, and that you have help, that you're not alone. And that's one of the hardest things to remember. And I remember, I'm like, I have so much to do, and I have to do this, and I have to think of intentions and accomplish them. And it's like, you can ask for help, right? And it's whether you believe in like the angelic realm or just your spirit guide realm or your ancestral. Like there's certain cultures that are just like all related to ancestral, calling on the ancestors, which is something I don't relate to as much as I do calling on guides or angels, or even like ETs, but we'll go there in another episode. So it's just knowing that there's something greater and that you're not alone.
And that's what's helped you shape who you are today, right? In a way.
Oh, 100%. Like I can't imagine the timeline, how it would be different. I can't imagine it. So it's like I'm just continually grateful for everything that's happened.
And do you have a specific spiritual routine that you follow?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's my Kundalini and breathwork practice, and so I start with like the spinal flexions. I know it seems very physical and it's a spiritual thing. It's like I'm doing a lot of spinal flexions because that's opening the physical body to the spiritual. And that's, like I said, I used to be so up here, and realizing that it's like, oh, the body is what anchors in those spiritual codes, right? Like spirit speaks through the body, not just the mind. So I'm doing a lot of spinal work. I'm doing the breath work. I'm doing the Sakriya. And I end everything with a prayer. Recently I've been doing a practice called, I just call it I Love You meditation, where for 7 minutes, and I got this from a book called How to Love Yourself as if your life depended on it. And I highly recommend this. That's a man who healed his depression and heartache through an I Love You practice. And one of them is 7 minutes, hands on heart. And you just repeat, I love myself. I love myself. And it can be very intense, right? Like, and I can even, when I tell someone, like, even when I heard it, I was like, there's a resistance there. Like, I feel a resistance to that. It feels uncomfortable. It's the same with eye gazing in a mirror, which is my next big goal, which I haven't gotten to yet, which is the mirror work. I mean, I can't think of anything more intimate, right? But this is kind of a first step. So for 7 minutes, I did about 2 to 3 months of that every day. And
did that change you?
It did. It opened to a level of compassion with myself, and that's one of my greatest pieces of work. I'm a very giving. I coach for a living. I love to give advice and give coaching, and I have to remember that I have to give it to myself. And so it's a weirdly intimate and sometimes uncomfortable process, and I can feel the layers of resistance falling away the more I do it. This is where it starts to get really trippy when you do this work, because you approach life with the mirror concept, and you're like, oh, this is actual magic. And this is how we manifest. This is exactly how we manifest.
And have you manifested something that has come true in the most magical ways that you can remember?
Yeah, there's certain things, like I say, the most recent ones, I got this condo. I bought a condo in the middle of the pandemic, and in Boston. Sorry. Oh, congrats. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was like when people say you can't, right? Like in Boston, the real estate's extremely expensive. It's very competitive, and a single musician was not someone that you'd think could buy a house on her own. And it just happened. And I was doing a lot of visualization. I was doing a lot of like embodiment of what would this feel like. I was passing the tests. I was standing in my worth. There's just like a whole methodology that I was following. And it happened pretty easily. I manifested an incredible roommate who's on the same level as me, and a certain gig that paid a lot. Like, it's just a lot of little things and a lot of big things. I manifested this sabbatical I'm about to go on. But mostly it's been about feeling states for me. It's like, okay, I have this stuff. All right, I have stuff, and what I really want is to feel this way. I want to feel powerful. I want to feel embodied. I want to have a strong knowing of who I am. I want to feel like I'm an influencer who does podcasts on the regular, right? So it's feeling states now that I'm mostly interested in.
And earlier on you mentioned that you pray as well as a part of your routine. So out of curiosity, how do you pray? Like, do you fold your hands, or do you kneel down, or is it just in your mind?
Oh, good question. Yeah, it's right after my Kundalini. So after I do the Sakriya, which is, I mentioned it like 3 times, but it's like this mantra, and you're doing an abdomen, sa, nam, sa, nam, and afterwards you're required to rest because you just moved a ton of like energy through the chakras. So the resting period. So after I do, and then I'll do the I Love You meditation, and from that place, as a ritual, I do prayer hands, prayer mudra, and then I just close my eyes, and I often start, it's very short, but I often just start in gratitude of like what I'm grateful for. And then if there's something I want to ask for, like today, I was like, let this podcast go smoothly. Let me be in alignment. Let me feel like everything's going smoothly. And then let this day unfold in the best way possible for the greatest good of all, right? It can be simple or it could be longer, more complicated. So it's a small, short practice. It's not like a really big thing that I do on my knees every day.
No, that's and plus, when you do these spiritual practices, it kind of raises your entire vibration, right? And it just sets the tone for the rest of your day.
Yeah, it really does, especially when it's combined with all those like physiological practices like the breath work. Because it's like when I walk into the world, life looks different.
Yeah. And when you mentioned the eye gazing the mirror, I never thought of that before. I mean, that definitely sounds interesting. Are there any other such exercises?
Yeah, mirror work. I mean, I haven't gone there fully. And that was one of the practices in this book is look yourself in the eyes in the mirror and do the I love you practice. And I was like, I'm not ready. And I'm like, why are you not ready? What are you afraid of? Like, what are you running from? Yourself, which you're always going to be with. And there's another practice called a mirror work that I actually purchased and I haven't done it yet. It's by Sister Shanti. She's on Instagram and she's an amazing teacher of this work called mirror work. And it's just unraveling the layers of self-doubt and the things holding you back from your greatest version. So that's the one that's, I would say, the most, I mean, I don't think it can go deeper than that, really.
Yeah, no, this itself seems intense.
So intense. Let's do it.
Yeah. And just outside of the morning routine that you mentioned, do you meditate as well? And how do you meditate?
Yeah. So to be honest, my meditation alone has been not as great, and it's the end of the semester right now. I don't want to do excuses. I'm giving excuses. I'll just say it hasn't been great because you can always find time, right? But since I spend about 30 minutes in the Kundalini practice. It's kind of my form of meditation, which is a little bit more yang, right? It's a little bit more energized, but it's a focus practice. And then there's the meditation at the end, which is short. So I know that it's time to do something a little more yin, a little more inward. And that's going to be a goal of mine for the next section of my life.
No, definitely. And maybe when you're in Mexico, you never know. Might be time to get back into it.
What about you? Do you have one?
Yeah, so I also meditate for 15 to 20 minutes. And it's mostly turning inwards. I do close my eyes. I know that there are open eye meditations as well. But I do find the ones, I do find the ones where if I close my eyes, it works better for me. So that's what I do in the morning. And then I follow it up with some affirmations. And outside of that, the other thing that I do is obviously some exercise, some physical exercise. I think that really personally, I feel it completely lifts my mood and my energy up.
Yeah.
When you have that, when you show that gratitude for the smallest of the things that you have.
And the intention of just like that opening the crown, it's kind of like plugging your phone in at night, right? It's like I'm charging my batteries, and even just setting the intention of I am open to divine help.
That's it. Yeah, I'm open to receiving, connecting with the universe. So yeah, I like so far, I think COVID has been a trigger to be more at home and to get to, all of these practices a lot more, and it's worked fantastic for me. So yeah.
Awesome. It's so inspiring.
And Jamie, do you believe in signs from the universe or angels or 1111 or any repetitive numbers?
Yeah, I think why not? It's funny. I went to a cafe yesterday and my number was 22 and my friend's number was 33. And I was like, are you paying attention? So, my roommate always sees 888 like everywhere. It's crazy, like uncanny. So assigning meaning to it specifically, right? You can like type that in and be like, oh, it means that things are about to change. So I feel like that could be it. But I also think I like to think of synchronicities as they say the universal wink, right? Like it's like you got it. Let's go. Like I'm listening. And I think it's as simple as that for me. I know they say like 333 is ascended masters, 444 is angels, 111 is pay attention to what you're thinking, right? So there's different assigned codes and things, but I think it's mostly just, okay, I'm not alone. I get it. I'm listening.
Yeah, a wink from the universe. I love that.
Isn't that awesome, right? It's like, and
Oh,
it's the same with synchronicities. It's the same of like you mentioning, do you have a mantra? I was like, oh, I asked for one last night. And that's a little one, right? But like you could think of porcupines. Why am I thinking of porcupines? And then you see 3 symbols or stickers of porcupines on, and then it's like, that's
yeah.
a wink. It doesn't have to mean you need to go buy a porcupine or something, but it's just the universe being like, isn't that funny? You're like, yes, I get it.
Totally. What would you tell the skeptics who don't believe in guardian angels or who just think all of this is just a mere coincidence, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's just like everyone has their own time, right? So it's like I have no desire to instill my belief systems on anyone, and that's how you know it's like a fully integrated experience, right? Because it's like it's my experience. I know it's true. I've
Yeah.
had mystical religious experience that I don't tie to a certain deity or religion. I just know that love has flooded my body and brought me to my knees, and I can never take that experience away, right, from myself. And all I can do is embody that is true, right? And so if someone is a skeptic or an atheist listening to the podcast for some reason, that would be interesting, and being like, wow, like I wonder what that would be like. That alone is an opening,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But if they're closed off to that,
Yeah.
that's their path, right? And
Yeah.
it could happen from a car accident or from a death of a loved one or just next life, right? It's just that's not their karma.
Yeah. And, sometimes you can totally be blocked off and that's fine. But if you have that element of curiosity, you never know what doors it might open up.
Right. And it's an asking too, like, surprise me, show me.
Yeah, totally. And when you're stuck, how do you ask the universe, to help you out or when you want something?
Oh, that's such a good question. Yeah, trusting in alignment and getting in the body and getting still. And prayer. I also have a strong journaling practice too, right? So it's like being able to express the thoughts, the blocks, what is in the way of this, why am I perceiving this as a block? And it's really as simple as asking, like, align me to the thing to alleviate this confusion, or like bring me to the answer or the person or the story or whatever it is that's going to provide me the next step in the evolution.
Would you have any specific advice for people who really want to ask for guidance from the universe if they're feeling stuck somewhere in their life?
Silent stillness.
Mm-hmm.
And that alone, people are like, right? So if there's that resistance, that means they haven't done that. And which is, I think, step one in the keys of really just when you're in silence, the answers come. I think they say like prayer is the asking, meditation is the receiving. Right? So it's like getting fully still with yourself, letting the mind, and I avoid saying meditation because it scares people, right? It repels people sometimes because they think it has to look a certain way.
Yeah.
When I say meditation is just being willing to be still and listen, and it's just much more simple. And actually, after a breath work session, when you're clearing things out, putting your hand on your heart and just saying, what does my higher guidance want me to know? And then you could sometimes, when you're surprised by the answer, it's not you.
No, that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So, coming to manifestations, Jamie, I do believe that each one of us have the power to create our own destiny by aligning with the universe. We can be the author of our own journey. So, if we have to match our frequency to the frequency of the reality we want to create, what are your thoughts about that?
It's my favorite because it's the mirror. Like like I would say, like, if you can remember one thing, remember the mirror. I follow a program that's amazing called To Be Magnetic, and she talks about the neuroscience behind it. Are you subconsciously programmed to believe this is possible, right? And have you seen to believe it's possible? Like, do you know someone in your demographic or your level that has done it? And do you believe you're worthy of it? Like that's core number one. Because if you're not believing you're worthy or deserving of it, it's always going to feel elusive.
True. And that's great that you said that, because it all starts with the self. You might be surrounded by all the successful people, but if you don't believe you have that or if you're worthy of it,
Right.
Nobody can help you. You know,
No.
you have to believe that you are worthy, and then what you mentioned is surround yourself with people, you know, who inspire you to be that specific thing you want to achieve in life.
Mhm.
And also, it's also about being the energy that you want to attract, right?
Right. Right. And you can see when you know that, when you're like, oh, I don't know if I feel worthy of a man
Yeah.
who tells me I'm beautiful 5 times a day. Like when you start to come up with like, oh shoot, I'm not. And then we go back into the spiral. Oh, I
Okay.
have more shadow work or some inner child stuff to look at, right? So that this is like how all these topics start to coalesce, right? Because it's just this like beautiful spiral of energy of like, okay, I'm not ready for that, so I'm going back down. And then I go back up. So like the timeline is always inching forward, but as my coach says, it's always up and down on the way up.
Self-discovery.
Yeah, it's really it's what we're here to do. Like we're not here to win the Grammy Award or to have the mansion. It's how did we feel on the way up to that?
Yeah, for sure.
That's the cosmic joke.
Definitely. And how do you manifest specifically? So there are different methods that work for different people. As you said, you know, some journal as well, others visualize it. Is there any specific method that you think has worked for you and that you always kind of fall back on?
Yeah, so it's what I'm saying, but like in the order of like you call it in. So like what's an example? It's like so so I was gonna say I want to, and I'm gonna speak it into existence. So I am creating a course for my coaching. So it's gonna be sort of like an evergreen course, something that someone can buy and have access, lifetime access to. And so during my sabbatical, I'm going to be doing that and probably writing an ebook. See, I said probably again. See, I'm going to watch my words, right? Because my words are I'm casting spells. So I'm going to write an ebook and continue to build my brand, right? So it's like I'm calling that in. I'm writing it down. Who do I know or who is inspiring to me in life that has done that, right? And if I don't know anyone that's done that, I got to go find them, right? And then do I believe I'm worthy of it? What's holding me back from that? Like, am I resourced to do that? And I've created the time and space. Like, I didn't have the time and space to do that, which is why I had to go to my job and say, can I please have a semester off, as scary as that was, right? And it's also busting through limitations of what, you know, I'm leaving a steady paycheck to
Yeah.
pursue something that I don't, you know, I have no idea how it's going to be. And so that is also showing the universe that I'm ready to play ball, right? Like I'm ready to go to the next level because staying the same is not an option for me.
Oh, definitely.
Right?
And you know, you can script your own destiny with your own thoughts, essentially.
Yeah. And if the thoughts are repeating a lower self-worth thing, you know you have more work to do.
Yeah. And because sometimes, you know, people get frustrated because they've tried manifesting their goals, but they just don't materialize.
Mm-hmm.
What is your advice to them?
Yeah, because it could be a few different things. It's like, is that the actual thing meant for you? Because at the end of the day, we're always desiring the feeling state, not the thing. You know, so it's like if I want a loving relationship, but it's not happening, it's
Yes.
like what do I need to change? You know, do I love myself? Do I call myself beautiful? Right? Do I see myself the way I want to be seen? Do I feel deserving of a higher level job? So and it's really the feeling state, right, that we're trying to create. So this happens a lot with my students who like they want to be on stage or they want to be stars or they want a certain amount of following and it might not be happening, and like that could not be what's in the most alignment with them. Just like in the beginning when we talked about my career, it's like that wasn't what was fully in alignment for me.
Yeah.
But my ego thought it was. So that's what's like, what is the ego desire and what is the soul desire?
And what is ego for you?
Oh my God. You're asking the big one. Yeah, it's you know, and I don't want to say it's not the true self because it's a part of the true self. I think it's a part of ourselves that is designed to live in the world. And I struggle with, you know, the ego side of me that feels like they have to look a certain way to be valuable. Like that's one of my shadows. I'll just be wildly vulnerable right now. Is, you know, the egoic desire to look a certain way. And I've been, I drank the Kool-Aid of the belief system that a woman has to look a certain way in this society, because that's how I grew up in the 90s, with Victoria's Secret models, the supermodel energy, and being in a field that is very image focused, right? So that's an ego part of me that I struggle with, right? Especially as I get older and moving into my 40s and things. It's like the ego screaming, my soul is saying, really? Like in the most loving way, right? My soul's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, I know, right? And then it's like go back and forth, but we're in a world of egos. So that's why like the meditation, all these practices we're talking about, like brings you back out of that, so that we can navigate with the ego. We're never trying to get rid of it. I mean, some maybe like sadhus are, but certain spiritual concepts maybe want that. But like for those of us householders, as they say in yoga, the people that are in the world doing the work, we have to have a healthy relationship to our ego. And it's always just kind of coming back to the true self, the witness perspective. Oh, look what Jamie's doing. She's being superficial again. How adorable. Right? And having that relationship was like, okay, yes, I have compassion for myself. My heart chakra is open.
Yeah, like attaching yourself to the wrong image,
which is always fleeting.
That's it. Yeah. Pivoting the conversation to reprogramming, your mind. What are some tools to unlearn, relearn, and rewire our brains? So let's say I want to form a new habit, for instance, waking up early in the morning. How do I reprogram my mind?
I mean, there's actual reprogramming tools like hypnosis, which is part of that program I mentioned, To Be Magnetic. I highly recommend. And she has her own specific hypnosis for different things. But it's also a matter of the discipline, and that's so hard. It's like a hard pill to swallow, because like, oh, discipline sounds so hard. So it's a combination of, and I always say, you need to have the habit that you want. That has to override your desire to not do it. Yeah, so like my desire to sleep in can't be more strong than the desire to get up and do my practice. But for me, like I needed my practice I needed it to prove to myself that it was worth doing, right? So when I started to feel the benefits of my morning practice, I was like, let's do it, let's go. Even when I don't want to, even when I'm tired, so it is setting the discipline. And I'm a big person of vows. So I've only done a couple because I take them so seriously. Is you set a vow. Like if you really, really want this new lifestyle, you get really, really honest with yourself. You're saying, I vow to do it. Because honestly, like if you really want something, you're going to do it. It's really that simple.
Yeah, totally. And you mentioned hypnosis. I actually did a recent podcast with Albert Nirenberg, and he explained everything about reprogramming your mind through hypnosis and hypnotherapy, which was fantastic. Wow. But what you also mentioned about discipline, that's so vital, because I think at the end of the day, if you really want something badly, you will do it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then that's like journaling is helpful too. It's like, where are my blocks to this?
Yeah.
So it's like it's a smaller version of manifesting a little bit, right? It's like, I want to create this new habit. Well, what's preventing me from it? Yeah. And I also really love tapping. Do you know about like EFT tapping?
Interesting. What is that about?
So these are seven acupuncture points.
Okay.
And they all connect to the amygdala in the brain, which is what's also sending out that like fight or flight. This is why this practice is so amazing for anxiety, because that sympathetic nervous system is pumping out like, things are not okay, I'm late, blah, 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 everything's overwhelming. And when we do these 7 points, while we talk about what's bothering us, it's sending these electrical impulses to the amygdala to like, chill, like you're good. It's like a little massage. And we're clearing, like in yoga we'd say the nadis, and in Chinese medicine they'd say the meridians, right? So it's these like all these energy channels that are interwoven, and we're getting the energy system in alignment. And that's been a really amazing thing to remove blocks for me. That combined with breath work, life changing.
You mentioned tapping. Actually, I haven't heard of that before, but it definitely sounds interesting. So what you're saying is when you're anxious and the thoughts are just going on nonstop or fifth gear, what you do is you tap in certain places, is it, at that point in
Right.
time?
Yeah, and this is really good for like depression or just or even headaches, like something if you're like, oh, my stomach, so you're just like,
Yeah.
ugh, like I don't know why I feel this way, like I'm just so sick of this feeling.
Mm.
I don't feel like I'm supported. I have so much work to do. I'm underslept. Oh, I haven't even bought cat food, right? And it can just be like a complete um, laundry list of annoyances, right? As you're doing this, like, why can't I just not love myself? And it can go as deep as that, or just like
Yeah.
the laundry list of things you have to do. And then you take a breath, and you can see, do I need another round? And then you kind of just calibrate as you go. And I've worked with an actual therapist, excuse me, before EMDR to do this practice, and she was doing more specific cues based on what I was needing to work on.
Wow. And there are many people who constantly overthink. Is
Yeah.
that something that'll help, just the constant
Yes.
tapping?
Yes, 100%. And it's also, that's also very high, like it's an upper chakra. Like
Mm-hmm.
when overthinking, right?
Yeah.
These are overactive. So like I would
Okay.
immediately do lower chakra stuff, like even just physical activity, like squats, like where are my legs, like mindfulness is just about feet, like these really like banal basic things that get us down from the mind, because that's my tendency, right? I have a lot of air energy,
Yeah.
right? A lot of like vata, so it's like my air kind of goes up, and so I have to do a lot of work to bring everything down and integrate it all.
Okay. So for someone who is overthinking a lot, you'd recommend that they do a lot of lower body work.
And then go put your feet in the grass.
Mm.
Like ground, like any sort of grounding meditation, just put your feet in the grass, look at a tree, put your freaking phone down.
That's one thing everyone is addicted to.
hold like a black crystal, like like hold like a black tourmaline. Like I have this, I mean, this is all upper chakras though. Like this is so beautiful, right? This is all like, so yeah, anything to get, and nature, just like nature is mother, it is the earth, it is the bottom, right? It is like the depths of humanity. It's like who we are born from and where we're going back to, so it's like nothing grounds us more than the earth.
For sure. Was that crystal an amethyst?
Yes.
And do you have a lot of them, or do you keep specific ones?
Yeah, I have a fair amount. It's not as crazy decked out as one may expect, but yeah, I've been throughout this. I'm holding a selenite, which is like a really clearing energy. So it just kind of like, it clears and cleanses. So that's just kind of hanging out. And if I have any sort of anxiety, I don't really suffer from anxiety, but like racing thoughts or higher energy, like I'll hold something with like a lot more iron, like a lot more like a black brown, something that brings energy down.
Did you notice a different energy before and after you use the crystals, or you
It
got?
can be subtle. Because I'm a little more mental, like I have to be in a much more mindful frequency to feel that, to be honest. Where my roommate will be able to feel something immediately. Like she's so in tune energetically. So like there's certain crystals like moldavite, certain meteorites that I do feel, where I start to feel like, woo, a little spacey, a little like excited, and also same with like obsidian. I've had some like wild experience with obsidian, because that's a very powerful crystal that can open you up in certain ways. I don't want to take too much time with that, but obsidian's one of my favorites.
Great. Do you have it here right now, or do you mind showing us your crystals?
Do I have an? Oh, I have. Yeah, this one I got in Utah. This is I got this in Moab, Utah, which is a.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's hard to see, So, and some of these aren't as glamorous as this, right? Like some of the most powerful ones are just like a piece of black shiny rock,
Do you use these crystals while meditating as well?
Yeah, like I've been lately. I've just been sleeping with them under my pillow, which I haven't done in a while. And oh wow, now that I say it, it's like I've had some wild dreams lately, and I just realized that, like, I'm like, I've been so active in my dream state. I'm like, I've been sleeping with a crystal every night. So yeah, like obsidian in Game of Thrones, they call it dragon glass, which I love. I was like, they brought up crystals in Game of Thrones. But this is known to kind of unearth things that you need to look at. I call this like the Scorpio of crystals. It's like the underworld. It's like, what do you need to look at? And it can kind of open you. It also is a protection. You can like, it kind of absorbs energy. So
Okay.
it's like it kind of just can ground you in. But yeah, like obsidian will, I don't think of obsidian as the most gentle. Like this will be the most gentle, right? It's clearing and like celestial, but this is just like, oh, you ready to do some work? Let's go. Right. So we have like the kind of polarity.
Yeah, for
Like,
sure.
and there's chakra, like there's crystals that align with all the chakras as well.
And how do you cleanse your crystals?
Salt water for some,
Mm-hmm.
mostly sage, because some don't like salt water. Like this will get weird and potentially like fall apart. Like some don't like salt water,
Okay.
but sage, any sort of smudge smoke,
Mhm.
and then you charge them in the sun. I've been really not great about this, but now we're on the solstice, by the way. This is the solstice here in the US.
Oh,
Equal night and
brilliant.
day, really powerful manifestation portal. We should have started with that.
We just,
Yeah, so this is a great time to leave crystals out to charge.
that's it. And do you charge them in the moon as well?
I haven't been. I've been so, this is like my reminder to get, like, treat my crystals with more reverence. I haven't in a while, but I will.
So, Jamie, as a spiritual life coach, what are some tools and practices that you'd recommend our viewers to keep their mind more calm and composed?
Journaling. I
Mm-hmm.
love giving journal prompts, right? So it's like at the end of, this week I gave my students, or the ones, because sometimes I'm just doing just voice, but then a few of my clients were do a combination, and sometimes it's just full on coaching. So I'm having everyone do a year-end review where they go back throughout the year and they look at all the lessons they learned, all the things they've manifested, all the things they feel like they've accomplished. And it can just be a really powerful journaling tool to kind of see where you're at. And same with intention writing, right? Really just being clear on the intentions that you want to bring in and write that on paper with a pen. Like the power of mind to hand pen, like they say the hands are also an extension of your heart. So really allowing that truth to be on paper. And then if they're willing, give them some breath work, give them some mini meditations. And like I say, like start small, right? 3 minutes of breath of fire, get back to me in a week. Okay. Oh, you loved that? Okay, let's add this, let's add that. And it's going to be specific for every student. But yeah, journaling, breath work, and yeah, just like being really, really still and honest. Because I think it sounds so simple, but like people aren't doing that. People aren't being like still, quiet, and honest with themselves.
Right. Great. So you're off to Latin America for a sabbatical. What made you take that break?
Well, it's the edge that I needed to meet with myself, right? I've been teaching for a long time, but I've been at the college that I'm at for 12 years and teaching privately, coaching privately, singing, gigging, writing, all the things. And I'm just like, it's time. There's a knowing when something needs to change, right? And that can manifest as like an unsettledness. It can manifest as depression. For me, it was just like, it's an excitement and a frustration, like a little, like, I need to do something different. And I also do not like winter. So I was like, get me out of here for the cold winter months. And I went to Guatemala last year and I was inspired because I met people that were expats or just traveling digital nomads that were like, spiritual nomads. And I was like, but working and making money. So I was like, okay, can I be that? Do I have the courage and the capacity and the finances to take this risk? And I made it happen. With manifestation, there's also like logical steps. Like you save money, you get asked to take a leave of absence from your job, you find an amazing woman to take care of your kitten. Like, there's so many steps involved, but it's the whole point is so that I can figure out how to up level my career and do something creative and do something that's going to reach a wider audience while creating like a lucrative career path for me at the same time that feels fulfilling.
That's great. Thanks so much, Jamie, for joining me on today's podcast. I have personally learned so much on this podcast, and
Yeah.
I am going to deep dive into a lot of things that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
You seem to be such an open, positive person. Your energy is so light. It was brilliant. A pleasure meeting you. Thank you for sharing all your knowledge on various things.
You too. And I want to reflect to you. Your energy is also very grounded. Like I can always like feel when there's a, like you're a meditator. Like I can feel it. Yeah. So you're very grounded and aware and like clear. So I want to reflect that to you.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Thanks, Jamie, for joining me, and I hope you enjoy your sabbatical.
Thank you so much, and best luck with the podcast. You're doing a really beautiful thing for the world.
Thank you so much.
Wow, that was an intense conversation, one that expanded my mind and thoughts to areas I never really thought of before. Mirror work, ETF tapping, eye gazing, EDMR, and whatnot. I hope that you've taken back a lot from this podcast, and if there's anything that you'd like me to ask Jamie, please let me know in the comment section below. So stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for many such interesting conversations coming your way. Until next time.